that for the future, our checkpoint has to be built as well for the future. The same people have been working for years identifying and working towards the port of entry of the future. We've partnered up with them. We're taking what they've already learned and identifying what the new port has to look like. And we're taking that, we're building that into our checkpoint. And then we have to make sure, and this has already been pushed up, that we have adequate staffing. There's one thing that cannot happen is having traffic back at 20 minutes, an 8-lane checkpoint, and 2 of them closed because of staffing. That defeats everything we've been working towards. We're aware of that today, and we're going to continue pushing towards that. One of the things that hasn't been touched on, I think is important, this will be my last point, is what we've seen here in Tucson sector is an increase in not just narcotic seizures, but an increase in the number of seizures. And if you look at the highways as a point of egress out of the border, the reason we're making those number of seizures is because a year ago this month, we stood up 9 tactical checkpoints. We have 13 sites identified, but we stood up 9 tactical checkpoints. And other than safety reasons, those checkpoints have not come down. Because of that, our number of seizures, not the poundage, the number of seizures has increased. In 2008, and this is year to date, we had 2,883 narcotic seizures. To date, we've had 4,800. The reason being is those points of egress have been shut off with these checkpoints. Even something as rudimentary as a tactical checkpoint is taking the points of egress and the highways away from the smugglers. What that does is it keeps them in our compressed enforcement area longer. That's where I have the majority of that, 90% of that, the rest of the workforce is in that area. And it gives us the opportunity, if you will, a second or third bite at the apple to make that law enforcement integration. And that's also why, and all the intel is telling us, the narcotics seizure numbers, or poundage numbers, excuse me, have gone up. And that tells us that last year we were just beat that many more times. Because the cartels aren't going away, the demand in this country remains great. So we have to do things, we have to approach this different and work it different. And I think this stats, the number of seizures supports another major of support for having a good checkpoint effort here in Southern Arizona. So with that, ma'am, I'll go ahead and close so that we do have time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate if you just join us up here on stage. And also, if we could get the lights up a little bit, I think that would be helpful. All right, we have just a little over an hour, and 33 comment sheets have been submitted. And we've got a couple of more. What we're going to limit you to 3 minutes. If you speak more quickly, we're going to be able to get through more of the questions. And rest assured that your comments will be considered. We will answer them to the best of our ability if you don't get a chance this morning. Rich Bowman, please come on up. We've got a microphone up here in the front with Amanda.
Yes, my name is Rich Bowman. I live in Tubac, and I want everybody to realize that myself and I think a lot of my neighbors support an interim checkpoint. We're very concerned about the plan for a $25 million plus permanent checkpoint that, in my estimation, would mean the major effort would no longer be to secure the border. And if you look at Webster's definition of permanent, it means lasting, to remain, intended to last indefinitely without change. I believe that these interim checkpoints at $1.5 million could do the job that a $25 to $40 million permanent checkpoint could do. I would submit to Chief Gilbert that Tucson is the largest sector, or has the most drug traffic. We know the border is a sieve. That's why they're getting more than 30% at the checkpoint now. The only way to really understand how drugs are getting through is if we knew we were successful, the cost of drugs would go sky high. That isn't the case throughout the country. I also want to thank the GAO, but I do believe that their study was only to look at the effectiveness of the checkpoints. They proved that, yes, there is quite a bit of ineffectiveness, but they didn't really look at the true source or the true way to solve this problem in securing the entire border, not just the new Mariposa port of entry. And I do think the analogy with a football field is very flawed. Backfields in a real football game are mobile. Our checkpoint isn't. A football field has definitive sidelines. We're talking about over 6,000 square miles that now the Border Patrol has to be responsible for, from the checkpoint north of Tubac all the way to the border. And I also don't think the GAO people thoroughly understand the alternative routes through the riparian area and other north-south routes that illegals and drug smugglers are using. Our checkpoint is uniquely different. Our community is uniquely different than other checkpoints in Texas and to the west. So I do think that we need to look at not saying the permanent checkpoint is the answer. Interim checkpoints, yes, maybe the chief should also have interim checkpoints north on I-19, north of Pima Road, on Mission Road, on Sahuarita Road. There is a major problem in the Tucson sector. We probably need a lot more interim checkpoints until we can figure out a way to secure the border. Thank you.
Rich, thank you. Would you like a response from the GAO team? Rich, would you like a response from the GAO team?
I think you've done a good job with the direction you have, but I think you missed some of the other aspects and really realizing the crime that we see south of the checkpoint through our communities. I don't think you touched on that enough. I think the data that you have on retail measures and those kind of things made no sense when I read through it. And I think Stan just didn't have enough data to really interpolate something that is needed.
Okay, let me just start, at least respond to your, thanks for the question, Rich. And I'll turn to Amy then, she can talk more about the data. With respect to the scope of our review, it's true that this particular assignment was scoped to those 4 questions. I do want to point out, though, that I've been doing this for 12 years. I've been in this position. At any given time, I probably have a dozen different assignments going on, and everything from secure border initiative to operations at the ports to alien smuggling to, and so we didn't ignore all the other information that we gleaned from those other studies. The fact of the matter is, it's extremely difficult to assure that that line of scrimmage, if you will, could do the whole job. As far as the mobility of a linebacker, and I apologize to people who hate sports analogy, I hate to use it too. But usually, you don't have, you want mobility. You do want mobility, and that's one of the performance measures you want. But that doesn't mean you don't have that tier, if you will, to get, in this case, the illegals that the front line misses for whatever reason. Either they are very successful at avoiding detection, the radars or cameras don't see them, they go through gullies or washes that they just avoid detection for whatever, or they go right through the port of entry and their concealment is very good. Whatever reason, it's having that next line. I understand we tried to get whatever data we could on the crime and the real estate, commercial activity, whatever, and we contacted many of your colleagues in the Tubac area and other areas to get anything that was reliable. We saw a lot of data that were reported, and then when we peeled it back, we found out it wasn't particularly reliable, or it was misrepresented, or it seemed to be tuned a certain way to come up with an outcome that the data really didn't support. Believe me, we did try, it just isn't available. And if you want to work with the local police to come up with a data set that would show what you're looking for, maybe that would be an acceptable solution. But Amy can tell you about the data collection.
I think actually, Rich, you covered it. So we just have certain data reliability standards that we're required to maintain. So what we use in the report are those data sets that meet those standards.
Great, thank you, Rich. Dan Walden, please.
At the ports of entry, the federal goal is to detect and apprehend 30% of major illegal activity. And this shows the need for a 3-tiered strategy.